You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. Today is Monday, September 19th, 2022. Today is also National Butterscotch Pudding Day, as well as National Talk Like a Pirate Day. Aye, matey. Thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you are joining us on Clubhouse, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. But without further ado, let's pay a quick bill and get right back to the news.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Monday, everybody. Hope you had an amazing weekend. Starting off the show, that's right, it is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte. He had a busy weekend at daycare, babysitting babies, changing diapers, and coloring, and also, too, shells with paste, making art on the weekend. That's right. When he's not doing any of that, you can find him doing that with grown adults at TEDx conventions. And when he's not doing any of that, he's constantly brushing up on his football drills, when he's constantly backpedaling on safe banking. That's right. It is none other than the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Thank you for that phenomenal Monday introduction, Jason, and big shout out to Zora Owen Lamitte, my little macaroni mama. She is a beast with any kind of uncooked pasta and putting that together. She's like a young Basquiat in the making. I promise you. Look out for her. But welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for getting high at 9 with us yet again. My headline today is from MJ Moments, Kyle Yeager. Apple lets users search for marijuana and pharmaceutical interactions in latest iPhone health update. Now, back in the day, in the absence of actual pipes, we'd smoke weed out of pretty much anything we could find, including apples. Who would have thought one day in the not too distant, not fully dystopic future, Apple would be luring us back in through the gates of their walled garden to access... put it on mute there. To access our sacred sweet Chiba data. According to Yeager, Apple's latest iPhone software update gives users an option to track medications and learn about possible drug interactions with other substances, including cannabis. That's right, members of the Blue Bubble Gang, who downloaded iOS Update 16 last week and uses Apple's built-in health app to snitch on themselves and give all their information to the data gods, may or may not have noticed a small revision for medical tracking. Users can now let Siri know if they use alcohol, tobacco, or cannabis and search for potential interactions between medications on your list. While the update might seem innocuous on the surface to people already knee deep in allowing big tech scrape all their personal information for free on the reg, here's the part that really worries me. Per the article, a footnote on Apple's press release says that the medication and interaction information is evidence-based content licensed from Elsevier, remember that name, a leading publisher in health and science information. If you guys Google Elsevier, you might not find them to be the best company to share your personal information with, Apple approved or not. Researchers have criticized Elsevier for its high profit margins and copyright practices after earning over $900 million in profits with an adjusted operating margin of 37% in 2018 from copyrights, while adding little to no value in their products. Elsevier is commonly accused of rent seeking, the act of growing one's existing wealth without creating new wealth. Most Elsevier's work is publicly funded, and its high costs have led to boycotts, with many institutes dropping subscriptions altogether, and to the rise of alternative avenues for publication and access, such as preprint servers and shadow libraries. For the sake of time, I'm just going to list the rest of the shit that they've been called out for over the last few years. In 2009, the firm offered $17 Amazon gift cards to academics who'd go on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble websites and give their clinical psychology books 5-star reviews. A big investor in its own data and text mining engines, in 2015, they were found to have been blocking researchers and third parties from text mining their research for information and inconsistencies. Since 2010, they've been known as one of the most prolific publishers of books aimed at expanding the production of fossil fuels and working with the fossil fuel industry to optimize fossil fuel extraction. It commissions authors, journal advisory board members, and editors who are in fact employees of the largest oil firms and market data services and research portals directly to fossil fuel industry to help increase odds of exploration success. So if you don't mind big tech companies giving your personal health data to big data firms known for shady practices funded by big oil, I guess it's no big deal. Admittedly, I think the technology and ability to streamline all this stuff is pretty amazing, and it has been well documented that has saved lives. But until the proper checks, balances, and transparency measures are in place to protect my info from leaking all over the net, or we're given some kind of insurance that none of this is searchable by law enforcement, or I'm at least given the opportunity to profit off all of my own shit being hoarded out to all these big companies raking in billions in profit off our personal data, I'm opting out. Apple Health is not going to be actively tracking any of my family or my own information anytime soon. This is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, and I'm interested in hearing if any of y'all will be looking to opt into this service.
They got to give me a whole hell of a lot more than an Amazon gift card to get my info.
I agree with you, Rico. I do not give my information to the Apple app and all that stuff. You know, it's Google's getting into the healthcare business. It's the next big thing. The next biggest money thing is your health information. That's how they're going to be making money. And, you know, Google suppresses not only their advertisers, they also suppress other alternative health, holistic health practitioners, because they want you to be in with them, because they have actually purchased a Christian health, the largest Christian healthcare system. I can't remember the name of it. So they are really big time, both feet into the healthcare arena now.
So I definitely agree with the data conversation, and you know, I don't want to give away all my data, but in that same breath, the conversation about pharmaceutical interactions with cannabis, when people aren't having, open dialogue conversations with their healthcare practitioners or their doctors, this kind of thing is the kind of thing that you'll need. If you're capable of having an open conversation with your doctor about your medications and cannabis, like you should. And this is it's important to know whether or not cannabis has any interactions, because it's not, a completely harm-free as far as interactions, medication. Like there are some negative interactions that can happen with certain pharmaceuticals. And if you're not capable of having that conversation with your doctor, I think this might be a start, but I think, you could probably also just go on to Google and Google that, search that shit yourself. Does cannabis interact with this? But I mean, ideally I would say, try to have a real conversation with your physician that's giving you these pharmaceuticals and say, hey, I also use cannabis. Is that okay?
And if you're Googling that stuff, make sure you're going on incognito mode because it is searchable by federal law enforcement. And I'm not giving a pass at all to any of the insurrectionists on January 6th, but a big way that they were able to catch so many of them was because of their search data that was scraped from them by local cell phone towers right off their cell phones.
Downloading a VPN would be helpful to hide your
To a certain extent,
identity.
yes. And location.
Rico, I'm sorry. Can you go into more detail on how Apple intends to help with interactions? Are they going to give advice? What are
Well, you list
suggesting?
your medications. You list your medications in the app, and so then you say when you're drinking or smoking, and it should tell you if there's an interaction or why. If you're like, oh, tomorrow I feel this way, it's supposed to like be able to tell you some possibilities.
And it can warn you if you have a certain medication listed that, oh, you're consuming cannabis, then you probably should not be taking this medication, or you're going to have this kind of adverse effect.
It'll tell you that.
I mean, isn't Apple opening themselves up to all types of
Yes.
legal lawsuits,
Yes.
medical
Right.
lawsuits for
crazy.
being a doctor without a doctorate degree? Dr.
But-
Felicia?
But
But it's just reading. It's just reading what the list of the pharmaceutical. It's a warning label, right? Like you get
pretty
an antibiotic and it says don't drink alcohol, right? So you plug antibiotic into your system, and then you go to drink alcohol, and it's like, hey, you're not allowed to drink alcohol on this medication. And so I think
people
just
who
similar.
get to make warning labels are the FDA, not fucking Apple.
But they're going to take that warning label. They're going to take that warning label and push that data.
I get it. I
how
hear
much
what
how
you're
much
saying.
money you think the FDA gets from Apple?
All I know is I worked
That's a good
with
question.
a cannabis data company, and that was the sole purpose of the app. It was designed by a pharmacist because she always was getting questions from people on how their medication would interact. And she's like, I can't give you that advice. I can't even tell you that. So we went through tons and tons of legal and all sorts of shit trying to figure out the way to be able to tell people, yes, this will interact with your high blood pressure medication or whatever. And truly, the answer was that we had to go outside to third parties to be willing to give that kind of information because you just can't do it. So I don't see how Apple is going to get around that. And I think they're opening themselves up for a host of problems.
I mean,
They're not. Watch that. Look in their legal documents. Trust me, they have it written down somewhere that we are not liable for
they've
anything.
had-
Trust me.
Yeah, we probably just.
Oh, that's in the terms of
I think it's
agreement.
going to court.
That's in
Yeah,
the
they're
terms of agreement of the new software update that
But
everybody
if all it's
downloaded and
doing
didn't
is
read.
citing, but all of it, if it's all it's doing is citing what your medication's bottle says, right? Like, because they have to push those documentations into the FDA as the lists. So if all it does is cite something similar to the way like a bibliography system would cite something where this came from in a book, I don't necessarily. All it's doing is pointing you to the thing that you need to read.
So they say.
That I don't. Right? Like if it's like pushes you there and it's like, hey, read this sentence. This is what your pharmaceutical says to do. I don't necessarily know that that's advice so much as like, don't forget to read this, you know?
I think they're going to walk a very fine line about recommending product that they.
Oh, they walk a fine line on
yeah.
stealing all our data to begin with.
Tech companies
I don't
do
know why
not
we're so
have.
worried about hiding it. They're already taking it.
It's a matter of risk management, and I guarantee in all of their bean counters have already weighed out the risk. What is the worst possible scenario if they were involved in a class action lawsuit? How much are they going to lose versus how much they're going to gain from this? And I guarantee the ratio is phenomenal, given that this is Apple. And then on top of that, like they don't give a shit. They are going to tell you that they're doing one thing, and they're going to be doing 3-4 other things behind the scenes that you won't find out about until 10, 15 years from now. And that's the way social media world goes. And that's the way the data industry is right now because people are too dumb. And like, I apologize, but people are too dumb to protect their most valuable assets right now. And your most valuable asset is your own personal data.
So the moral of the story is people are
Absolutely.
stupid, huh?
Well, what a great segue to our next correspondent, Mr. Jason Beck. Up next, the longest running retailer in the history of America, and my favorite person to segue on a funny, the member of any political party that might piss you off, and also paying his respects to the Queen today at the palace.
That's
What
right,
happened?
mateys. Yes, coming to you live from across the pond, right at the castle. But today, my story goes all the way back to New Mexico, where a precarious Pueblo man prepares to sue after Indian Affairs agents destroyed cannabis. A Pecurus Pueblo man whose medical cannabis plants were confiscated and destroyed by officers with the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs 3 years ago is seeking $3.5 million in damages from the U.S. Department of the Interior. Charles Farden filed a tort claim notice or a notice of intent to sue with the federal agency earlier this month, alleging violations of his federal and state constitutional rights. But unlawfully cutting down and burning Mr. Farden's medical cannabis plants. The document states the federal law enforcement officers in this case committed an act that is tantamount to these same officers unlawfully entering into Mr. Farden's home without a warrant, going into his medicine cabinet and flushing his prescription diabetes medication down the toilet. The federal agency's Indian Affairs Department declined to comment. They said, "We do not comment on issues regarding ongoing litigation," a spokesman for the agency wrote in an email on Friday. Albuquerque attorney Jacob Calendaria, an independent state senator who is representing Farden in the case, said that the 3 BIA agents entered Farden's property without a search warrant. They proceeded to cut down and then burn and destroy 9 medical cannabis plants that Mr. Farden was growing. Calendaria said that at that time, he had his New Mexico cannabis card, and he also had a personal production license. A police report on the incident states Farden signed a consent to search document, which Calendaria said isn't true. His office filed a Freedom of Information Act request, which didn't produce such a document. Our point is that because it never existed, he said, these officers didn't have a warrant to enter or search, let alone seize property, the attorney said. The officers actually violated BIA policy, which is very clear that when BIA officers are to enforce the Controlled Substances Act, they need to preserve, catalog, and create a chain of custody for all evidence. Here, these officers barged into my client's property, placed him in handcuffs, and had him out in the sun for multiple hours. Farden is a diabetic and didn't have access to food or water while he was handcuffed, Calandrea said, and the tort claims the states he has for several years cultivated and used medical cannabis to treat several debilitating conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder and chronic pain, in full compliance with New Mexico state law, as well as the laws and traditions of the Pueblo of Pecurus. One of the driving factors why the damages are so high in the case, we contend, is also how blatantly racist the Department of Interior's enforcement and federal drug policy is, Calandera said. If you're a non-native person engaging in the same conduct Mr. Farden did on non-native land, your chance of federal prosecution and conviction is next to zero because Congress has prevented the Department of Justice from using money to enforce those laws. Farden told police that the marijuana was for medical purposes and only for his personal use. Farden, who told police he followed the state's regulations for production and was compliant, asked officers what authority they had to seize the marijuana plants. In a quote, it says, "I explained to Farden several times that the violations of manufacturing marijuana within federal jurisdictions," one of the officers wrote in the report. A unidentified Pueblo employee who arrived at the scene told the officers tribal government Craig Quanchiello had given Farden permission to cultivate the plants within the Pueblo. Pecurus Pueblo decriminalized medical cannabis for members in 2015. He says, "I provided the information on the manufacturing of marijuana within federal jurisdictions to be a federal violation," the officer wrote in the report. After the officers cut down Farden's plants, they buried them in Nombre States, or in Nombre Pueblo, after receiving permission from the governor there. The report states samples of 3 plants were secured as evidence, the report states, and Farden could not be reached for comment, but he told the Associated Press last year he was startled to be placed in handcuffs as officers seized mature plants laden with buds. He also says, I was just open with the officer, straightforward," Farden said, the encounter with police. When he asked what I was growing, I said my vegetables, my medical cannabis, and he was like, "That can be a problem." The tort claims asserts the federal government enforces federal drug laws in a racially discriminatory way. For indigenous persons on indigenous lands, there is a huge risk and desire to criminalize, but non non-native lands, the federal government has taken a completely hands-off approach, Calendura said. In Mr. Farden's view, and in my view, this is a fundamental example of radicalized enforcement of drug policy. I think the Interior Department and Secretary Deb Haaland, quite honestly, need to explain why the Department of Interior has chosen to take a much different approach than Department of Justice, and in doing so, deny my clients' rights to medical care and to medicine. Well, I'll tell you what, I think this is a whole hotbed. I wish this gentleman the best, and I think he actually will be successful in claiming, in winning this lawsuit, because it is a clear violation of the federal spending bill for these officers to be spending federal time going after cannabis that has not crossed state lines, nor has been diverted to a minor. So we shall see, and the saga will continue, and this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News Hour.
This is crazy. So this is a native land in Taos that the head of the native property said you can grow, but the government showed up for some reason to like kick down his door and take his plants anyways.
Correct.
That's really crazy because we're like they were saying, like they're not allowed to do that without the involvement of the actual the elders of the organization.
Well, not to mention, too, this goes totally against the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, which is the federal appropriations bill that prohibits federal officials from extrapolating any federal funds to go after cannabis in regards to...
But this is also a native land.
They've been doing that.
I understand that.
Yeah, we covered this multiple times last year. They've been doing that shit. They don't give a fuck.
I just don't see how this is even able to.
Majority of the other ones that we've seen, the native land knew that the police were coming. And the native there's been several where they've allowed for them to come because they don't want, like their tribe doesn't want cannabis on it. So I definitely know that they've been coming, but usually it's with the involvement of the tribe too.
What was the one we covered?
He had permission from the tribe.
Yeah, we covered a big one in New Mexico last year that not at all. The feds came in and dude had 3 plants. And they came and ripped up his entire farm and took his plants and arrested the guy. Yeah.
The fact that this has happened in New Mexico twice, then there's got to be something happening with there, because I know a lot of native land that's growing cannabis in California, and nobody, and like we're talking big volumes of it, and no one's kicking down any doors.
Jason, did it say why that official was like unnamed, or I forget how you referenced that person in the article, but it was like the official who gave the permission was.
It did not. It did not say. No, it did not go into any of that. But I'm willing to bet that they're trying to keep their cover because they want to keep a low profile on this story and kind of sweep it under the rug, because there definitely is. I mean, to me, this is the same thing as the federal government going in and raiding Mar-a-Lago.
There must have been classified information.
Where's the crickets?
When they went into Mar-a-Lago, at least they had a warrant. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Fair enough, Gretchen. Fair enough, Gretchen. No warrant produced.
There must have been classified information there. Those officers need to be reminded that when someone is in your custody, you are like totally responsible for the well-being of that person. So there was reference, Jason, you mentioned too.
He wasn't given water when they had him handcuffed out in the sun.
Yeah, that's obviously a massive issue. Lots of issues in that article, but just as a quick reminder.
Yeah, law enforcement, give people water when you put them in cuffs, because of course they can't drink with their hands.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's keep rolling here, man. Like that's sad, and I hope it gets resolved, and I hope that motherfucker gets paid for real. So she's a cannabis business consultant specializing in efficiency, agriculture, and compliance, and draws upon wisdom gained from 30 days in a cold, dark Colorado cell to make sure you never have to go through what she did. She does more than shows up daily and get hypey for spreadsheet, because in her spare time, she enjoys busting bullshit across state lines and is currently working on her doctorate in dirtbag psychology at Long Beach Community College. Coming to the stage next, it's the self-described general data bitch with some spicy Monday news for us. What you got for us today, Nicole? I can't wait.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Happy, National Butterscotch Pudding and Talk Like a Pirate Day. So I've got some really great information, matey, for everyone in regards to what's happening with Blacklist. I don't know if everyone's familiar, but Blacklist XYZ is an Instagram handle that is, I would say, a leader in where a lot of people go to get their cannabis dirt. It is been operating for a few years now, pretty actively, where anytime something, something's being uncovered, Blacklist gets, some sort of scoop. But apparently there's some chaos. So my headline today is coming from the Daily Beast, and it's the messy breakup behind the hottest Instagram in weed by Chris Roberts. So at its peak, the Blacklist was the front page of the internet for the U.S. cannabis industry. Lured by the intoxicating user-generated mix of insider leaks, industry rumor, and gossip, and aggregated content that appeared to be copy and pasted directly from reputable news sources and spun into viral social media posts. The Blacklist built an audience now totaling more than 400,000 Instagram followers. The result was the most disruptive force in weed, as cannabis website Mary Jane described the outfit after interviewing one of the Blacklist's shadowy, anonymous operators in 2019. It is, in its own words, aspiring to be the punitive TMZ of cannabis. The Blacklist at times showed the unfiltered, unreliable, and darker side of cannabis. It was alleged that without conclusive evidence in industry circles that negative posts could be made to disappear for a few $1,000s. A practice popular Instagram celebrity and cannabis entrepreneur Burner suggested was extortionist, and the interview with SF Weekly last year. The Blacklist rejected claims as lacking evidence and saying libelous at the time. They have also responded to claims as unvetted information that has been published by pointing to legal protections for the hosts and user-generated content. Whatever the Blacklist may be, the people behind the controversial outlet are no longer anonymous anymore. A dispute of the company's ownership is the focus of a spiraling legal battle, and the latest episode in an increasingly ugly and increasingly public beef that is equal part personal drama as it is an industry sideshow. What's not to dispute is that Blacklist Register's founder and owner, as per Delaware corporate filings attached in the lawsuit filed earlier this year, is a Los Angeles area woman named Shalone Donnie. This is super interesting because this is not who I thought was behind Blacklist for a very long time. Donnie is, for now, still married to Adam Campbell, a longtime cannabis grower who has spent years fighting for the federal pot case in Montana. A divorce proceeding filed in 2021 is not yet final. That means the Blacklist is community property. That is an asset that should belong equally to both parts of both spouses. And Campbell is entitled to his half, as Donnie lawsuit admits. Still, she claims in her suit that since the inception, Miss Donnie has been the sole operator and manager of TBO, or the Blacklist Online, and she remains as such today. In addition to suing Campbell for unlawful misappropriation of Donnie's federal intellectual property, Donnie is also suing Matthew Wagner, a man who sat in the anonymous Mary Jane interview. Donnie's lawsuit alleges that Campbell and Wagner represented themselves as a Blacklist in negotiation with a potential partner earlier this year that would have seen the brand expand from a media into cannabis manufacturing and verification. Donnie found out about this. Her suit alleges that she received DMs on the Blacklist account from people that she did not recognize, saying, "Nice meeting you," or words to that effect. Much of the public drama around the Blacklist centers around Wagner, a former adult nightclub owner, promoter, and performer, originally from Missouri, where he said in the interview he originally met Donnie, and Wagner started selling advertisement for the Blacklist in 2019. In the response to Donnie's lawsuit filed last month, Wagner alleges that Donnie formed the Blacklist in the direction of her estranged husband, Campbell. The Blacklist logo is an empty-faced human figure, upturned hooded sweatshirt, is based on Campbell, the two men told the Daily Beast. Further, Donnie promised Wagner 1/3 stake in the company if he could figure out ways to monetize the platform. And Wagner started closing 5-figure advertising deals in late 2019, according to his own filing. The letter claims that Donnie sold half the stake in the company for $250,000 to another California entrepreneur, giving the company a potential valuation of $500,000. That claim could not be immediately identified. In a telephone interview, the entrepreneur, who Wagner said brought the stake, denied making any deal and claimed to have no relationship with the Blacklist. The correspondents dismissed Wagner's claims before throwing out some accusations of their own. All of Matt Wagner's allegations proved to be false and untrue in the court of law. The person wrote, "There's no proof of this with false allegations," which is why the lawsuit was filed against him. Interestingly enough, this gentleman has also been caught up in some litigation in regards to a brothel in Thailand, that there was a sting operation, and there was a 16-year-old who was one of the women of the night, and they did end up arresting him at one point, but he was at that time back in the States. So he claims no involvement to the minors involved in that situation. So in a separate interview, Campbell said his wife formed blacklist corporate structures by herself because he was on federal probation for the marijuana charge that he picked up in Montana. Campbell has yet to be served with the federal suit, which is described as a deliberate effort to draw out the divorce and lock him out of his shares of the blacklist in the meantime. So we're going to continue to watch this kind of thing shake out. I'm not sure who's going to actually win. I think that it's very interesting to know who these people are. They've been kind of hiding in the shadows for a long time. I know many people who have said that they felt like they were being extorted by them. So I think that it's very interesting to say that they were not able to, nobody was selling the ability to pull down negative ads. I'm super curious to hear what anybody in the audience or anyone on the stage has to say, and if anybody's had any interactions with the blacklist themselves. I'm curious, do you guys think that it will survive this divorce and continue on? And I'm Nichole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
I think the blacklist will definitely continue on.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think Shallon's going to end up remaining in control of this organization. But I also wonder what you guys think of whether or not it's extortion, because people pay to suppress stories on the internet all the time. And so is that extortion?
Right. I mean, it still is extortion. Extortion is extortion, whether you get in trouble for it or not.
How's it extortion?
People pay. No. People pay to bury things on the internet, and those services are putting things above it. If you're getting if San Francisco Post calls you and is like, "Hey, I got the story about you fucking cheating on your wife. Give me $10,000 and I won't publish it." That's extortion, bro. That's extortion.
Yeah, your boy Donald J. Trump knows enough about that, man.
That's extortion. And now if the ad was posted and you're like, you call them and you're like, what is it going to take? And they're like, we can't do shit. And then you call one of those companies, and there's companies that'll just bury it on the internet. That's what usually happens is they put so much stuff above it that nobody goes to Google page 3, right? It still exists. It's just on Google page 3.
Yes.
Right. But what about,
all right.
And I know this is unrelated. What's I just watched this stupid thing on Netflix about the guy who was putting porn up of women or whatever.
Oh,
I mean, it was the same thing. He said, if I'm not taking your stuff down unless you give me money. So
that's extortion.
That was considered extortion.
Yes. That's extortion.
Ransomware.
That's what I'm saying.
Nicole Buffon. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I was just saying, if they come at you with if you pay us, we'll take it down, that's extortion. Versus if you came at like a PR company and you paid somebody to bury it by putting a bunch of other interesting shit on the internet about you. That's what I'm saying, the difference. Like people do that.
I can accept that as a differentiation. But we have Nicole Buffon up from the audience. Nicole, do you have a brief comment on this?
Good morning, everyone. I just want to say I use Blacklist as kind of a sounding board. When I see an article or I hear something, some rumors bubbling throughout the industry, I go there and kind of see what they've posted, what articles I can do a deeper dive and research on. I feel like in this industry, if you operate with integrity, then you don't have to pay people to take down negative news about you. Just do right in the first place. Now, some things might be fluff pieces. Some things might be, so that your competition can get a leg up on you, which is the nature of this industry, of any corporation, and the capitalist society. But I feel like the Blacklist, it is one of those spaces in our industry that we could utilize that doesn't care about whether it's negative press for one of their biggest sponsors. They're just going to post what's out there and the truth.
I don't know about that.
I disagree.
Whatsoever. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There are plenty of haters and people in the industry. It doesn't matter how you behave. If they don't like you, people are going to post negative shit about you.
The Blacklist has been very irresponsible too with a lot of
unless it's all anonymized and it's open source, like WikiLeaks is. Like you're going to have shit like this go down. It's always going to be. We have
to, Rico. We got to pay a quick bill real quick. Hold on.
Speaking of.
Welcome to Los Ashes, the headiest city in America. Los Ashes is a 10-pound smokable city curated and created by the world-renowned roller Weavers. In the past, Weavers has amazed cannabis lovers with roll jobs such as a smokable 5-pound rocket launcher and a 10-pound Darth Vader. But now Weavers is rolling an entire city. You can have your business featured in Los Ashes with a ton of different sponsorships opportunities available. Contact Weavers at smokablecity.com for full sponsorship information.
The thoughts and opinions and general shade thrown on the High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers, not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and the speakers make no representation regarding the legal status, substance of any country, area, territory, or authority. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not apply, constitute any endorsement by us, the expression of any whatsoever with any speaker or anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show is probably not for you. Also, fuck off.
Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention that you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Oh, yeah. Coming up next, she splits her days and nights between cooking delicious treats that I need to get me some, Gretchen, and battling it out on K Street with pot-loving libs across the aisle. She's a full-time, feisty, red-headed conservative with Mayflower roots and an unhealthy love for safe banking, along with Jason Beck. You know who it is. Up next, the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. Happy Monday and ARG.
Good afternoon, Rico. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment. And my headline is California governor signs 10 marijuana bills, including interstate commerce, employment protections, and record sealing. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed 10 marijuana-related bills yesterday, including measures to set the state up to allow interstate cannabis commerce, provide employment protections for marijuana consumers, facilitate record sealing of prior convictions, and prevent localities from blocking medical cannabis deliveries. The legislature delivered numerous cannabis bills to the governor near the end of the session, and Newsom acted on the majority of them in one fell swoop. He said the reforms were necessary to help fulfill the promises of legalization and continue to address the collateral consequences of prohibition. He said, for too many Californians, the promise of cannabis legalization remains out of reach. These measures build on the important strides our state has made toward this goal, but much work remains to build an equitable, safe, and sustainable cannabis industry. I look forward to partnering with the legislature and policymakers to fully realize cannabis legalization in communities across California. One of the most significant pieces of legislation that the governor signed on Sunday will allow for interstate marijuana commerce from California to and from other legal states contingent on an official assurance that the activity would not put the state at risk of federal enforcement action. Looking at some of the other bills that he signed was AB 2188, which would make it unlawful for an employer to discriminate against a person in hiring, termination, or any term of condition of employment, or otherwise penalize a person solely because of off-duty marijuana use. SB 1186 would prohibit a local jurisdiction from adopting or enforcing any regulation that prohibits the retail sale by delivery within the local jurisdiction of medicinal cannabis to medicinal cannabis patients or their primary caregivers by medicinal cannabis businesses. AB 1706 will enhance justice reform provisions of the state's marijuana law by mandating the courts to process record sealing and other forms of relief for people with eligible cannabis convictions on their records in a specific time frame. AB 1885 would prohibit regulators from penalizing licensed veterinarians who recommend medical cannabis for animals and revise state law to include definitions for marijuana products intended for animal consumption. AB 2568 would provide, if it is not a crime solely for individuals and firms to provide insurance and related services to persons licensed to engage in commercial cannabis activity. AB 1894 would add advertising and labeling requirements for cannabis vaporizer products, stipulating that they should be properly disposed and would constitute hazardous waste if thrown away improperly. AB 2210 would prohibit state marijuana regulators from denying any application for a state temporary event license solely on the basis that there is a license issued pursuant to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act for the proposed premises of the event. AB 2925 would mandate the State Department of Healthcare Services submit reports to the legislators starting no later than July 10th, 2023, that accounts for cannabis tax revenue that has been distributed to the Youth Education, Prevention, Early Intervention, and Treatment account, as required under state marijuana law. And AB 1646 would authorize cannabis beverages to be packaged in containers of any material that are clear or any color. There was one other bill that has been yet to be enacted, and that was SB 1496. And that bill came out of the Committee on Governments and Finance, would make a series of changes to the state cannabis tax policy, including by authorizing regulators to extend the deadline for tax payments by cannabis businesses located in areas affected by an emergency proclamation by the governor. I know that everyone gets excited by the cute little words interstate commerce, but we all know it's kind of bullshit because that can't happen until real legalization. I mean, Newsom even acknowledges that himself, that it only happens if he has some official word that would keep them at risk or from risk. So I think that's very cute that they put that up there and they care about that. How sweet of them. But I would be more interested in AB 2188, which is the one that makes it unlawful for employers to discriminate against folks for their off-duty usage, as well as SB 1186, which gets medical patients delivery from outside of their area. I think those are more pivotal and important for Californians right now. Interstate commerce is a cute little pipe dream. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
A pipe dream, Gretchen, really? A pipe dream?
It is truly. These state bullshit initiatives without legalization are pipe dreams.
I agree with you, but it's good banter to keep banging the drum because we all want interstate trade.
So
everybody loves the
people
good
excited
beat.
for no reason because they
So-
can't do it.
1186 is one that we've been following for a while. It was the one that Sean had come up on a few months back on the old show. And he came back recently. 1186 was one that there were some organizations that were pushing against because they wanted to maintain certain control in the area. The original way that was written had to get rewritten because it originally said that they could ban delivery if they had licensed cannabis in that city. But then Weed for Warriors pushed hard and was like, fuck that. That's not fair. You're basically saying I can only get if I'm disabled, I can only get my cannabis from like the 7 dispensaries in Kern County or whatever. That's not fair. And so they pushed back hard and they got it where now any county cannot or city cannot say that you cannot let a delivery service in there no matter what. So that's exciting. I'm glad that you pointed that one out, Gretchen.
I'm curious if the people who are against medical cannabis delivery wanted to hold things up, could they like file a lawsuit and keep this law from being enacted?
I mean, it just
I
got
think-
signed by the governor, so
Yeah.
I would say no. I mean, it would take some time, and you would need a judge to say, "All right, we're going to put this on hold." And I don't think a judge is going to do that.
Under what legal basis would you even be able to challenge medical patients having access, Dr. Felicia?
Oh, I'm not personally, but whoever's against medical cannabis being delivered might, try it.
There were some industry organizations that were very much for it because it was going to help some of the players that were in certain cities, which I thought was very shady.
And anybody with money and a prohibitionist itch to scratch will sue.
Fair enough. Well, coming up next, one visit to this office is sure to get you access to all kinds of blue pills. All shapes, sizes, and colors are always included and welcome in this safe space. She's the Plants for Life CEO and a dual board certified physician, always promoting cannabis as medicine. And if you play your cards right, she will mix some yellow ones with your blue ones to make a greener experience. That's right. Coming up next, it is none other than the Dr. Felicia Dawson.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Jason. Happy Monday, everyone. My headline comes from Healthline. Cannabis during pregnancy. Researchers say children may display more symptoms of mental health issues, by Chantel Pattymore. To explore the effects of cannabis intake during pregnancy on a child's cognition, researchers at the the Washington University Brain Lab in St. Louis compared data from almost 12,000 children collected as part of the National Institute of Health's ABCD study. The initial exploration conducted in 2020 looked at children then aged at 9 to 10 who were exposed to cannabis in the womb. Children of mothers who continue to use cannabis are more likely to present with anxiety and depression. 2 years later, the same children, now aged 11 and 12, continue to exhibit the symptoms. Scientists are still exploring how cannabis affects a fetus's brain development. The endocannabinoid receptors do not develop in the fetus until around 5 to 6 weeks of pregnancy. Researchers said that the children of those who smoke cannabis after this time are more likely to present with cognitive issues, while adverse cognitive effects were not seen in the children of mothers who stopped smoking cannabis at 6 weeks. The article goes on to mention another study that was done in Ontario, Canada in 2020 that looked at births between April 2007 and March 2012 and found an association between prenatal cannabis use and autism. The rate was 1.4% in unexposed babies versus 2.2% in those who were exposed to cannabis. They point out another study done in 2008, which was prospective. They interviewed women who were pregnant at 7 months of pregnancy, as well as at delivery, over 600 children. And heavy marijuana use, 1 or more cigarettes per day, was associated with lower levels of intelligence and memory. Other significant predictors of intelligence included maternal IQ, home environment, and social support. They also referenced a 2011 population-based prospective cohort study of 10,000 mothers who delivered between April 2002 and January 2006. And they found that prenatal exposure to cannabis was associated with an increased risk of aggressive behavior and attention problems as early as 18 months of age in girls, but not boys. The authors or researchers of the ABCD study list several limitations. I will go into 2 of them or mention 2 of them. The ABCD study is retrospective in that they asked women about their cannabis use during pregnancy that occurred approximately 10 years earlier, which may have resulted in biased reporting and misclassification. Think about it. Do you remember what you were doing, thinking, and consuming in 2012? Another limitation was unmeasured confounders that cannot be discounted. So we know that the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists discourages the use of cannabis in pregnancy and breastfeeding. However, they did also issue a committee opinion on marijuana use during pregnancy and lactation that suggests that other socioeconomic factors could possibly be erroneously attributed to cannabis, like poverty, malnutrition, and domestic violence. Also, there was a researcher who found that women were more likely to use cannabis in pregnancy if they were depressed, anxious, or had experienced trauma. Stress and depression, which occurs in 1 to 10 pregnancies, causes changes in the placenta, which impact the fetal brain development, resulting in behavioral and emotional disorders during childhood. I'm Dr. Felicia Dawson, reporting for the High at 9 News. What are your thoughts?
How long do you think, Dr. Felicia, is going to be till we have really, really good data on this kind of stuff, where we have actual controlled studies where you can like single out? Like, I feel like there's way too many other outside factors that you just can't control with a lot of this stuff, and you really can't track it. Especially with studies going back to 2011. Like, who's to say like what they were taking at the time? You know, there's way too many factors that are not controlled in these studies that are coming out, right?
Well, I think it's going to take several years. Am I on mute? Let's see.
No, you're good.
No, we can hear you.
We hear you.
Okay, right. I think it's going to take several years, Rico. I am encouraged because the researchers of this ABCD study are starting another study, and they're launching it while women are pregnant. And so it's going to be getting information in real time. So it's going to be really good. And the ABCD study is also collecting information on the adverse childhood experiences. So what would be very interesting would be to see their findings overlapped with the people who have experienced, trauma in childhood, these mothers, and see if, I bet there's going to be a lot of overlap also in the cannabis group as well.
But without federal legalization, how how much do you think we can actually do here in America as far as research is concerned when we're talking about like not just the person that's volunteering for the study, right? The person that's inside the person that's volunteering for the study without federal legalization, like how far do you think we'll actually be able to go, Dr. Felicia?
I really see. I don't really understand the problem with following pregnant women who are in legal states who are using clean product. I personally don't see what the problem is, but I'm still being told that it's unethical to do this kind of research.
Dr.
But that
Felicia,
would give us more information.
I think part of the reason is because that they're not getting a quantified sample that the federal government can acknowledge as a quantified sample. That would just be.
How can we like decide what it is if we're just following, like, rather than giving them like a control this specific product, you know what I mean? Like that's the part that like I have a hard time with, because I consume cannabis in all forms and every version affects me differently. And so, you know, even different cultivars, different versions of edibles, whether I'm having a fat-based edible or a not fat, like there's so many different variables. So like without the control of the study and it actually being like, not just following these women to be like, oh yeah, you smoke and you're pregnant, like, but like, what are you smoking? How regularly are you smoking? What is that? I think, you know, how do we get there without federal legalization?
That's a great point, Nicole. But we also have Nicole Buffong up on Clubhouse with a comment on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. And thank you for that comment, Nicole. That is my biggest issue with all of these types of research. First, it's retrospectively that nobody remembers what they were doing yesterday or the day before, more or less than 10 years ago. And then the other factor is it just says smoking cannabis. It doesn't say in what form. Were you putting it in a tobacco leaf? Were you, somehow consuming black market or something that's not regulated? All of those factor into the experience and then the exposure to the mother and then baby. And so that's an issue for me as well. And shameless plug, Dr. Felicia is going to be my guest on Health is Wellness this Friday at 4:20 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to be talking about pregnancy and cannabis. And so it's free. You can join on our streaming live platforms for M4MM United.
I can't wait to check that out.
It's going to take more time, Nicole, and it's going to take work. I mean, it's easy to research a pharmaceutical, a single agent, but it takes a lot more effort and time to research a botanical. But I think we're going to need to, do at least 3 or 4 delivery methods if we're going to do this cannabis and pregnancy reserizing.
Right.
We also
isolating each kind, like how does edibles affect moms? How do topicals affect moms? How does, vaporizing affect moms? And baby individually.
Right. So I'm all for letting people put what in their body, what they want to put in their body. You control your own shit. But how do you guys feel if there are negative or adverse effects that are proven to come from cannabis? Do you think that it is the mother's fault? It should fall on the mother if something happens to the baby?
Whoa. What happens to the mother is
that's a deep hole to go down, Rico. But we also have Liz. We also have Liz Rogan on Clubhouse with a comment on this.
Thanks, Jason. I just wanted to echo, I think Nicole and Dr. Felicia and other Nicole are totally correct. We need way more standard data. And Rico, if this is indeed dangerous, I mean, I think pregnant women, for the most part, try to stay away from anything. So, obviously you want to do the best you can for your baby, but there's other conditions that come into play. The one thing I really wanted to say is that I am concerned because I see this as these headlines that they're putting out. So I'm all about it if this is really the data and the summary of it and it's been done well. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of fear mongering going around.
The amount of companies that publish this exact article it's a similar one like Dr. Talleyrand had a few weeks back about the heart. And he was like, yeah, it almost felt like propaganda because it was published 30 times. And when you look at the news, it's like every other medical had the exact same one. And so this was similar to that. I did see this one in a lot of places.
Whereas when the article that talked about cannabis next to pharmaceuticals got hardly any play.
Like the one article and then it got pushed down, and
follow the money. Who's funding that? All right. Shall we keep it moving, y'all?
Let's keep it moving, Rico.
Let's do it. Our next correspondent decided to trade in his issue gun and badge for a blunt and notepad. When not reading the weed news, this former cop's a security consultant at CC Security Solutions and, of course, a fellow dope Faja. Here to increase your chances of survivability, it's Chris Eggers. What you got for us today, matey? Arg.
Pirate Day, Butterscotch Pudding Day. Happy Monday. My article today comes out of KSDK, St. Louis. The headline reads, marijuana dispensaries damaged overnight in attempted robberies. St. Louis is heating up, getting a little bit more media coverage, so I wanted to touch on this. Police said 2 block dispensaries were damaged in attempted burglaries in Richmond Heights and Valley Park. This is authored by Sam Clancy. 2 marijuana dispensaries were damaged in St. Louis overnight, Wednesday into Thursday. This was last week. This has been going on for a couple weeks, though. At least that's been reported on. 2 block dispensaries in Richmond Heights and Valley Park, and a spokesman for St. Louis County Police Department said the burglary alarm at the Valley Park store started sound around 2:45 a.m. When officers arrived, they found major damage to the exterior doors and windows. Officers said that the suspects were already gone by the time officers arrived. I want to touch on this too in a second. The spokesman said that they did not know if any inventory at the store had been taken. I think we can assume that it may have been. A security fence was damaged and doors and windows were also damaged. Richmond Heights Police Department said that the dispensary on Brentwood Boulevard was broken into at about 5 a.m. and nothing was stolen, but the building was damaged. TBD on that one. Video from the scene showed a broken window to the storefront as well. And then this is again in relation to the latest rash of crimes. Greenlight Medical Dispensary, located on South Florence Road, was burglarized also at 5:30 a.m. This was Saturday, according to Ferguson Police Department. Police on scene were sweeping up people on scene were sweeping up glass from the storefront, and gates were broken at the store as well. More strings of burglaries have been reported over the last several weeks at several dispensaries across the St. Louis area. Last week of August as well, at least 4 burglaries were reported at dispensaries in Hazelwood, St. Louis, and Festus. Not Festivus, like the Seinfeld reference. In many of the cases, police said suspects used stolen Hyundais and Kias to smash the front of the store. A couple things I wanted to touch on here was that, you know, as these crimes continue to increase, I know there's a lot of chatter in relation to safe baking and how this will affect some of the burglaries and robberies. You know, what we're seeing a lot is that, you know, the cash is secondary to the product because obviously the product can be moved and is hard to trace, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's important to note that this is going to be a continuing issue that is increasing not only in violence, but in frequency as well. Not sure if we have any folks from the St. Louis area. Maybe, I don't know if Nellie's tuning in right now. There's an article I'm going to read next, totally not related to cannabis, that Nike raised the price of Air Force Ones after a song came out. Just thinking about it now, reading about this St. Louis article. My name is Chris Eggers. Thanks for letting me be a correspondent today. Happy Monday. Hope everyone has a great week.
Chris,
to see what thoughts are. Go for it, Jay.
I'm so curious about this. You being former law enforcement, the Hyundai Kia challenge on TikTok, where those are the most stealable cars, and you just referenced it that they use those vehicles, so you know that they were driving stolen vehicles in the course of this robbery. So what do you think of this challenge?
Yeah,
Wait,
I just started.
Did you call it a Hyundai Kia? Because those are 2 different cars.
Yes, it's a Hyundai and Kia. It's both of them.
Oh, 2 separate cars.
Correct. The Hyundai cars and Kia cars
I thought you
are
were
in the
saying the
TikTok.
Hyundai Kia. I was like, that's not a car.
No. Both of those cars are the easiest cars in the world to steal.
Yeah, I just started seeing that challenge too.
The newer ones, not the old.
There's like little gadgets you can buy that make it super easy to tap into.
Crazy.
And I guess I don't
Mercedes
know
too. Like Mercedes too, for believe it or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Hyundai or Kia. One of them was saying that they can, you know, help sort of abate that issue, but they were going to charge you some money to do it.
Of course, they were going to charge you.
Right? It should be a recall, don't you think? Like,
I think it totally should be a recall. I don't understand why the Department of Transportation hasn't done a massive recall on all of these vehicles.
What's going on? Rico,
I think Hyundai.
Someone's getting paid off.
I think Hyundai Kia had like the most recalls last year. Them and Ford had the most recalls in the U.S.
Can we get back to the story?
Yeah, sorry.
Right. I mean, that's a big part of the story. It's a getaway vehicle. You don't steal anything if you can't get away, Gretchen.
All right. I just think it's a number one, reason here to pass safe banking.
Late 90s Hondas. They're
so
easy.
True.
They're easy to break into, easy to steal. And Dodge
I'm not sure
Charger.
how that. Again, that's not relevant to this story. I agree with Gretchen. Holy shit, I'm still not sure how we went down that rabbit hole, Jason.
But nonetheless, pass safe banking already.
This has nothing to fucking do like with safe banking. Safe banking is not gonna fucking help like any of these people.
If we had safe banking, there would be more car loans for Hyundais and Kias.
Sorry,
The
Chris, did it get
It's
into
gonna help
at all
to some
any
degree.
money
Sponsor
stolen?
us.
To some
Chris,
what?
did
degree,
it
it'll
say
help.
if
I
there
think.
was money taken in this?
They didn't say. They said, in fact, none of the locations they confirmed what was stolen, if anything, and then one location they said, "Oh, no product was or nothing was stolen at all." So
In all the Missouri cases that we have been covering over the last couple months, like there has been no money stolen. They're just stealing product and breaking shit. So it sounds like there's a bunch of lawlessness going on there.
Well,
and
if,
safe banking.
well,
will
if
do
you look at
nothing.
the market, the Missouri market is actually doing really well as far as cost of goods, and so there's definitely going to be a very high resale value with stealing even distillate hot dog water carts.
It's true. No pushback on that.
What a
Matey.
great way to end our show today.
Like a
We're
pirate stealing from
fucking-
St. Louis.
We are right on time. Thank you for that story, Chris. You definitely, I don't know that I agree that it's another reason for safe banking, but I do know that it is a reason that we definitely need to be able to be treated like normal businesses in this world, in cannabis. And we look at so many different types of businesses that are able to have so much more protection. And without safe banking, the insurances will be a problem. So anyways, catch us Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Thank you to our sponsors, audience, and supporters, to the haters for still talking, and a huge thank you to True Classic, Weavers, and LAXCC for helping us keep the lights on. Thank you to the correspondents for being absolutely amazing, Cannabis to give us a reason to do this, and thank you to 3 is 4 for helping us create a space in this cannabis miniverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
Pass safe banking already.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.